Welcome in, everyone. This is our flow recap for 9/19/2025 to 9/26/2025. Voice is doing a little better than last week. If you were here last week, I was suffering a lot, so this week will be a lot better. I can dive into the flow a little bit better as well. And if you're new to joining this, as always, we're just going to recap the flow. I like to point out what stood out to me in the flow, kind of look at the IV, the spot, the bid-ask spread, just kind of the major things that you got to look at when you're looking at the flow. And again, if you're new, everything I do post is in real time. I don't edit my posts. I'm very selective in the flow that I post, and I recap everything, and that's posted as well. I don't post 1,000 pieces of flow and just cherry pick the winners, so we'll have a couple losers in here as well to look at, but let's get started here, and we're going to start with last Friday's flow. I'm not going to dive super deep in here just because this was part of last week's contracts as well, but we're just going to kind of recap it because typically the flow from Friday doesn't always make a move until that next week. So we had the NXE call. So we had the 11/21/10 call here. So you can see this is our entry here. They had 6,000 contracts at 46 cents a contract, $275K in total premium. And that's one thing I want to touch on quick too. When you see this here, I mean, you see the 2K premium is just because I'm selecting that one small contract from inside the flow in here. So that's why it's just showing that smaller premium, but this is your full premium of that trade here, the 275,000. So move on these. Obviously, they moved up that same day, and they hit their high here on 9/23, actually 9/24, high of 77. So that's a 71.11% gain. And one thing I always tell people when I'm trading the flow, I'm looking for a minimum of at least 10-15% or so, and should at least be breaking even on something like that, especially if you're just taking random flow that's coming into the feed like that. Anything under 10% I typically will count as a loss, but 10%, 15%, you see a lot of people post 300% winners. Those are great. They happen every once in a while, but you're going to be more consistent if you're taking 30, 40, 25% wins all the time and adjusting up stops smartly and setting up your stops. I mean, if you're up 15%, 10%, a break even, I mean, you shouldn't be giving up gains like that. Even if you're 55 days out, you have a lot of time on these contracts. You can set a stop like these. If these were up 71%, you should have a stop on here, and you can always re-enter the trade as well too. You should recycle profits and be smart about the things. Just because the whale goes negative doesn't mean you have to go negative. But again, good move on these, them hitting the high here on 9/24 here. So 71.11% on those. And then we had the 11/21 NVTS7 calls here. We look at these. Again, this was our entry on Friday. Almost 3,000 contracts at $1.10 a contract, 328,000 in premium. These moved up that same day, and this yellow bar is just showing you what that contract price was if somebody bought a contract at that time. Here's your high here on the 22nd. 150 was your high, and kind of chopping around that for a couple days as well there, but again, enough time to secure some profits here. So that 110 to 150, that's a 36.36% gain. So now on to this week. So Monday, 9/22, here's our flow. 7,500 contracts at 32 cents a contract, 242,000 in premium. Let's take a peek at the flow here. And these are just kind of the orders of operations that I do with the flow here. So you come down here, and there's certain columns I'm looking at. I'm looking at the time column, looking at your bid-ask spread, your spot price, your IV. I like to see that IV increase. So like here you can see that IV when that flow is coming in here. IV spikes to that 54.73. I'm looking at the spot price because your spot price is what the contract is filling at, and your bid ask is just the difference between the bid and the ask on the contract. And timing obviously is key. You want to make sure that time is pretty much, like this is to the second. So when I'm looking at this one, I see that IV spike here. I'm following that up here, and I'm just making sure that IV doesn't change majorly or anything. Spot price coming in here. So this is kind of where timing becomes important as well too. So if you stop just here, you'd be like, okay, well, I'm not looking at this other flow. Well, this is a big chunk of size, and you have an IV spike here. This is where a majority of that volume was coming in as well. So this is where you want to pay attention. You notice that IV spikes there as well. And that IV stays up there too. And this flow is coming in a little bit below that ask, but essentially at the ask here, and just kind of some common knowledge in the market. You're getting a lot of hits on this contract. That bid-ask spread is going to probably widen a little bit as well. So this is kind of why looking at that raw flow feed is a major deal. So now I come out here, and just to get to that area, that raw flow feed, you just click on that big candle, and it'll bring you to that flow that came in that little 10-minute time period. So just making sure it's an opening trade as well. You can see we had 10,000 contracts here against 100 open interest. You know it's an opening trade just based off that simple math. So if you're beginning to read flow, I suggest kind of looking at those higher volume contracts. It's easier to track versus like if you had 600 contracts against like 500 open interest, where it's a little more, you got to kind of be a little more detailed and vigilant on it. But these making that move that same day, and they actually hit the high here on the 23rd, giving us a high of 49 here. So that's a 53.13% gain. Our whale does look to still be in. Contracts trading at about 29 right now, so very close to break even. But again, that 32 to 49, that's a 53.13% gain. Like that, I would have a stop on something like that. You shouldn't be giving up a 53% return. So a good move on those. The 1017 IBM 277.5 calls. Massive move on these ones. So our flow here, come and look at this here. So again, and if you're new to watching this, if you're returning to, you'll, as always I tell people, you'll notice my flow is always very uniformed in how it matches with all the other flow that I'm posting. You typically see that IV spike here when the flow comes in. That spot price is coming in at the ask or very close to the ask, and your timing is all the same. So we just follow this up, take a peek. You see that IV increase here as well. Spot coming in at the ask, very good sign here. Now some of this flow after, again, paying attention to that time here. Probably not part of that trade. We don't know 100%, but more than likely it's just retail traders following maybe something like this. But IBM flow here, so coming in on the 22nd, all of that volume carrying over. Looks like our whale's still in, not really seeing any major changes in that open interest. And this flow, I mean, massive move on here. You can see that already, but kind of choppy for that same day, choppy for that next day. Small little drop, and then we just rocket ship into Thursday and Friday. So Friday giving us a high of 14.72. That's a 206.67 max return there. Great move on those. Fig. Let's take a peek at Fig here. About 900 contracts, 165,000 in premium. Just come down here again. You see that IV spike. That spot coming in here at the ask. Your timing is all the same. And there's your big move on there. It came in pretty close to the end of the day, so kind of gapped down that next day, and then obviously the next couple sessions there. Big moves there. So hitting a high of 450 here, actually Thursday and Friday. So a couple days there of it running at 143.24%. So another great move on those. SPY puts, and this was a public post as well. I actually put breakdown of this on X as well with just some pictures and all that as well. Your flow here. An ETF flow can always be a little trickier because there's a lot of hedging that goes on in ETFs, so keep that in mind. But we look at that flow, taking a peek at that IV, that spot price, that time, 1646. You see it increase. You see that spot price decrease a little bit here, but this is kind of where just little nuance and screen time help you. It's a 2-minute difference in the time, so SPY's obviously going to change price. SPY changes price very often, so for those that might not know. But you see that small little drop in the spot, so this is just where screen time kind of comes in handy. You know it's not part of this trade at that second. It's about 2 minutes later, so and then you just kind of follow that up as well here too, and you just kind of see that spot price come back up here as well towards the end. So good move there on these as well so far. These kind of running that same day, and then obviously the next couple sessions. Your high was on the 25th here of 921, so that's a 40.83% gain. Again, something I would not want to see come back to red, because I mean this whale was in at 654. Now they're trading at 682. Should not be giving up 40% of the trade here. So I mean, obviously you got to always kind of manage a risk as well too when you're following these, and just kind of being smart for yourself as well. But again, a good move on those SPY puts, 654 to 921, 40.83%. AMD puts, again, 2,000 contracts here, 406, 845K for premium. Kind of dropped a little bit when it came in, came back up to break even, chopped that next day, and then you had your big move here on Thursday, hitting a high of 580 there, so that's a 43.21% gain. We got some flow here on Friday towards the end of the day, so you'd want to check that open interest on Monday. And some of these I'm not going to keep diving super deep into. I kind of like to hit it more at the beginning so people are still here and want to watch. But so okay, next up, on Tuesday, the 11/21 HAL 25 calls. So this one's a little more interesting because you got some bid side flow in with this flow as well. So it's always a big misconception that all bid side flow is a sell and all ask side flow is a buy. Not necessarily. I do have some good examples as well in there too. But you see on the bid side, let's see if it's going to let me pop back. Sometimes it can be a little goofy if it's earlier in the week, but let's come back here. So you see, and I don't want to go to that next page because that's when it usually typically will kind of glitch a little bit, but you see that small little IV decrease here. So this is kind of just, you got to pay attention to that entire flow. So 48.94 there. Just kind of following this up. So you see drops a little bit more there as well too. Just trying to follow this up here. So then you see it kind of re-spike here a little bit and then drops again a little bit more. So something like that's a little harder to tell. I'm going to bring this back to the 23rd. So 1 second here. So here was that flow, and it might be a little different too just because the timing was for that entire day. So, okay, let's see. So, okay, your ask side flow, this is what would have stuck out to me right away here. So then you had that bid side flow come in after. So you see that bid side flow here first, and you see some of that bid side before here. So that ask side, then you have that small drop there, and then you have the repeated hits come in. So this is that section that I noticed straight away there. I was trying to find it there. I obviously do this video in real time when I'm recapping the flow. So your spike there, and then obviously you had some other volume come in here after too. But again, quick little move on these 128, and you'd see that just daily move there, and you just see that net call premium spike as well. But I want to pop that back to that full range. So Getting that same day move, and we just chopped for a couple days, stayed green, and then your big move was here on Friday, hitting a high of 208, so 61.24% on those. So good move on those HIMS, the 1017.52 puts. So great example here of, okay, we're going to have to do one more here. So here's our original entry, 1,000 contracts. And then we have some bid side action come after. So perfect example of not all bid side flow being a sell. Come down here and look from 23rd, 2,000 contracts traded. Look at how many of that carries over into Thursday here. That bid side flow carried over. So when we look at the flow here, this was the original entry. So again, you see that big spike in that IV. You see that spot price coming at the ask, that reads as a buy. Now, when we look at the bid side, and I haven't looked at the bid side flow yet, so I don't know how it looks, but we'll take a peek. I don't think it's coming in as a repeated hit, but I'm going to try to go another page back. So, okay, 79.71. Okay, let's do it like this. So I'm looking at that flow. So you see a lot of this size in here. So something like this, I mean, it's that timing's a little off. I can't tell you exactly when it all came in, but so it makes it a little tougher, but just kind of watching that IV chop around a little bit, spike and drop and spike and drop. So you can't really get a good read on that bid side flow. Typically with the bid side flow, you'd be looking for that IV to decrease and that spot price to decrease. That spot price is increasing and decreasing. So that one can't really tell, and it makes it tough because that IV spikes here on that bigger size and premium at the end. But we can see all of that carried over here into the 24th here. So we know that whale did not close those that same day then. These ended up hitting the high there on the 25th of 505. So that's 102% gain on those. And perfect example of why I'm always saying just adjust those stops up, because now look where those contracts are, 206. You never know what that full whale trade is doing, or what trade could always be part of a bigger picture. You just never know. So that's why I'm like, make sure to manage your risk and just be smart about the trades. So up next here, CORZ, a 1017.16 puts. Good move on these. 78. We had an add here again at the bid on the 25th. You can see 8,000 contracts, and most of that carrying over into Friday. Again, not all bid side flow is going to be a sell. We're going to look at this one a little deeper. In here. So again, you see that IV spike on the ask side there. Flow's coming in at the ask. And that IV drops a little bit there at the end. But not majorly, because it's a smaller premium of that contract there. So that's just kind of where a little time in the market and just screen time helps you as well. It's not a huge chunk of that trade. It's $1,000 out of that trade, out of a $1.3 million trade. So that's kind of just getting time in the market and knowing things. 925. So again, you see that bid side candle, you're like, oh crap, they might be cutting some of that. So let's take a peek at that. And this is why you look at that raw flow feed. You're coming in, and this is almost a mid-fill here, but you see that IV actually spike here on the big size and premium. So that would read to me as a buy at the bid. And it looks like it's part of some multi-leg-ish stuff as well too, so it gets a little confusing with the multi-leg stuff. But all that carried over into Friday, obviously, and then that's when we hit our high. 105 was the high on those, so 31.25%. All right. Our next three, we hit our losers for the week. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on those. I'm just going to kind of show them a little bit here. Starbucks, obviously, 923, 132 was the call. Dropped right away. Seeing a lot of that premium get added here. Have to see how much gets added on from that Friday contract as well. But looks like actual ads here. I mean, got some bid side stuff. So that volume's still there with a week to go on these. But that whale would be down 73% on those. I would probably not want to be down on that much personally on something that expires in a week. Okay, up next, the 1010 PL 11.5 puts. This one, just not getting a lot of volume on this one. This was actually down like 5% here on the 25th. I'm going to pop this here. Kind of, there just wasn't a lot of volume on it to see it, to get that true actual high here, but contracts trading at 43 right now. But that whale looks to still be in with a little time. That whale's down 38.57%. GM, the 1017.59 put. Again, another one where kind of a small chop, came back up slightly green, but then we're kind of down now as well. That whale contract trading at 73 right now. So that whale would be down 54% here with some time on them. And again, those longer term dated contracts, I always like to look for a discounted entry. Sometimes they run quick, sometimes they don't, but always smart to find a better, if you're looking for calls, a good support spot. If you're looking at puts, a good resistance spot, something like that. But the GM's down 54.09%. Palantir, the 10.3, 177.5 puts. These, interesting here. You had a lot of that volume on the 25th here, so that was their big whale here, 2,600 contracts. Didn't have that full volume carry over into Friday. So something like a Palantir obviously gets a lot of contracts traded by retail and all that, so it gets to be a little tougher. This is why I'm like, if you're a newer trader, it's better to follow very clean trades, like some of those big ones from earlier where it's like 10,000 contracts against like 100 open interest, where you can kind of see those big candles a little easier. But this one dropping that same day, spiking a little bit, and actually did hit a high here of 626 on Friday, and they were in the money a little bit, so they hit about 12.79%. Again, anything under 10% I consider a loss, but 12% good enough to get at least a break-even stop. The 1017 UUUU 18 calls. Let's pop this here. So these moved pretty quick. 2,700 contracts. $1.49 a contract, 415K premium. Quick little move there, dropped a little bit, then you spiked here on Friday. 250 was the high on those, 61.29%. So good move on those. With obviously a little time on those. Trading down a little bit here, but see, like, this is why I'm like, just always throw a stop on. You can always secure profits. I mean, this is a good return. 61.29%, 155 to that 250. Should be securing some profits, and you come back down to break even and you notice that whale's still in and you want to recycle some profits, do it. I have people in the group do it all the time. Really smart traders in the group. So up next we have the Pan W1010 215 calls. This one's going to have to be one that you have to check on Monday to verify that open interest. 700 contracts here, or 773, and then 750 here. Could be, it looks like they might be getting out at 82 here, down 45.33%. Little time on those, but I have to check that open interest just to make sure they're not adding at the bid. Won't know until Monday morning on those. Let's see. So again, another interesting one where you had that ask side candle come in, followed by multiple bid side candles. Now look at how much of that flow actually carried over into Friday. I actually thought these were exits right away because it came in. It's very, very close. It's hard. You won't know until that open interest updates, but these actually did have a high of 154 here on Friday, and we have another bid side candle here. So won't know for sure if that whale actually added there or took off some on Friday, but we'll know on Monday morning when we see that open interest change. Either be about 5,300 or 3,300 if they closed out, but 31.62% move on those, so good move there. Let's see, the BSX 10,399 calls. Again, pretty good move on those two. 235, and they opened at about 290 here on Friday. And knowing they're a little shorter term too, I'm a little more quick on taking profits on something like that, knowing that theta is coming over the weekend. 235 to that 290 though, 23.40%. Good move on those. So on to Friday here. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the Friday flow. That'll get recapped as well next week. The big SPY calls, 12,000 contracts at 4.9 million. Dropped a little bit here, and that way they're closed at 385. That whale's down 3% here with obviously a couple weeks left on those. DVN, the 10-17-38.5 calls. Quick little move on here, and you're seeing some of that bid side flow here near that high of the day. High of the day was 72, so that's a 10.77% gain. Some time on those as well. Then we have the 10-17 Intel 39 calls. Those spiked immediately, hit a high of 167, chopped near that high for a good chunk of the day. 32.54% on those, great move. Then we have one flow and charts play from last week to take a peek at here. Let me just pop that up. This was just kind of knowing the actual like macro effect of the market and everything back on the 19th there, and I didn't have this in last week's recap just because we didn't make a move. Noticed I was getting some longer dated January puts, kind of looking for roughly a 5% drop correction before then. 10-year yield was rising after the Fed's cut, so this is just kind of knowing the mechanics of the market as well too. Averaging here, and then puts were up here, and then I actually ended up taking profits here on Thursday. So that max return on those, I had it 11.10 was the fill, and then 12.63 was the max return. So I mean 13.78% gain, small little trade on those, but that's all I got for this week. If you're interested in trying unusual whales, I do have a discount code I will drop in the description. I also do post all the stuff real time in Stock Hub, really great group. I always recommend people to get the Stock Hub plus Keith's research folder. Keith has been trading for 38 years, has held multiple licenses, worked with hedge funds. He's very good. He does a lot daily live streams. He's very knowledgeable and all that. So if you're interested in learning more, interested in flow, really great place to come learn. I do live streams as well. So all right, everybody, have a great weekend.